Whether you're making a big cylinder or a small cylinder, the very beginning is kind of the same. We want to start, your starting shape is similar at least. So start with something wider than it is tall. And I'm also going to start with it wider than I want my final shape to be. So even if I'm going to make something that's only this wide in the end, I'm still going to start with it wider.
Okay.
I want this top to be relatively flat, same. Motions. Down in the center. And this time, when we learned bowls, we stopped about 1/2 inch before the bottom. This time I'm going to go all the way down to about 1/4 inch because I don't want any extra clay at the bottom, so you're not going to trim it. You just want a flat bottom that's even. So I go down and now I'm going to hook my fingers. And see, my fingers are hooked here.
It become much wider than it was in the beginning.
It was much wider, yeah. I'm going to keep coming a little bit wider, even all the way to like right there. And you can see I've knocked it off center, right? It's moving around, but that's okay because I can come back and get it to go back to being.
My problem, when I make this hole, every time it become off center.
I do too, usually. That's why, so afterwards I stop and I find I'll either do this. This is not my favorite way because it can cause some problems, but generally, let's pretend it's off further. If you push in, and your hand sits still, you go back to making it centered. So if you see it's off center, stop, recenter it. And then I'm gonna compress the bottom now. All I'm doing, going all the way to the corner, all the way back to the middle, and I'm evening it out, making it more even on the bottom, and then also compressing it. And now you see this starting shape? It's wider here than at the top. That's really important. You're going to keep that the whole way. Wider at the bottom, not as wide at the top. At the very end, you can make it straight or this way. But if you try and throw it straight at the beginning, it almost always ends up being really wide.
Yeah, that's what's happened with me.
So you throw it like this, and then make it straight. So I'm going to add water. I'm going to push it in even further. Like this, okay? And now I'm going to do the same thing, pinch at the bottom, move my hands up, but I'm not going to move straight up. I'm going to move in at an angle. And I'm pushing in from the outside right now. Coming up, and then stopping before I go over the top. Okay. This clay is very soft. Feels good. Sometimes I'll come back in and be sure, keep checking that that's not as wide as the bottom. Now I'm pushing in again, moving up, stopping before the top, and slowly taking my hands off. Pushing the top again. Pushing in at the bottom. So now, remember how I had started with a really wide shape at the bottom? What I'm about to start doing here is pushing in at the bottom and slowly compressing. So that circle is going to go from here to a little smaller at the bottom, and that's going to make the whole thing a little bit taller in the end. So I'm still going to push that in a little bit. Now I'm pushing at the bottom, I'm actually compressing it, making it not as wide at the bottom, and then grabbing that clay and continuing up. It's getting pretty dang, it's starting to get thin and the clay's soft, so it might want to twist. So I'm gonna have to watch that. So this was 4 pounds, and I should be able to get it. I should be able to get it taller than this at 4 pounds, but I am getting somewhat.
But it's too soft.
But it is pretty soft. It's going to be a little hard for me. I really don't need it to be much it's a pretty good width at the bottom, right? That diameter. So I'm just gonna keep coming up. I'm being really cognizant of not pinching harder as I get towards the top. Because I know that's my tendency, and it's even harder whenever your thumbs can't touch anymore. See, I'm all the way like this. My hands can't touch each other. It's much easier to all of a sudden lose control. This is happening because it's getting thin and tall, and then when I'm touching it up here, it's spinning slower than the wheel speed because of friction. So it's twisting it. So I'm going to use the rib. And compress it. I'm going to do it one more time. So that is how you throw a cylinder. The thing that I'm looking for is something to be really square on the inside. So look on the inside. Try to go all the way to the bottom and get a really square edge. Now from here, at something this size, this is where you could change its shape. I'm going to cut this in half so you can see. I can tell it's a little thick at the bottom, and that's always the really hard spot. And I'm hoping that it's pretty even. It's not the thinnest cylinder ever made, but the wall is pretty even, right? Except you can literally look at that front that's right there. This is a hard spot, even. I mean, for me, and often I think, but here to here, that's where you have to keep working. You're going to be able to do this pretty quick. In fact, you can already do this part almost. This is where you're going to have to start working.
But I made this totally different way.
Okay.
So when I started, it was the